media are just garbage. I'm sorry. I've been railing against the use of the term fake news for years on this program when it does not apply. When President Trump says that it's fake news, for example, that the media are misreporting his crowd size, that's not fake news. But this week, I have to tell you, it's an amazing thing. I'm getting notes from people. I'm getting texts from people who did not vote for Trump in the last election, who are now telling me they're turning me into a Trumpkin. The media are turning me into a huge Donald Trump fan. Why? Because the great arbiters of truth and decency, these wonderful arbiters of all that is good in the world, it turns out they are abjectly lying about issues ranging from Hamas to now MS-13. So the Democratic new playbook, I guess, for 2018 is defend Hamas, defend MS-13, and rip on the NRA. That's the new playbook from the Democrats, and the media are parroting that every step of the way. What am I so hot and bothered about today? Well, we'll get to the Hamas coverage in just a second, but here's what I'm really hot and bothered about today. President Trump yesterday was doing an event with a bunch of sheriffs from all over the country, and one of the sheriffs mentioned MS-13, and President Trump responded in this way. Here's clip 3.
We have people coming into the country, or trying to come in. We're stopping a lot of them. But we're taking people out of the country. You wouldn't believe how bad these people are. These aren't people. These are animals. And we're taking them out of the country at a level and at a rate that's never happened before.
Okay, so here is the reality. What Trump was specifically talking about was MS-13, because the line that led up to this was a sheriff saying, we can't actually deport MS-13 people. The line leading up to this, there's a sheriff named Mims who said, thank you. There could be an MS-13 member I know about. If they don't reach a certain threshold, I cannot tell ICE about it. And then Trump responded to the MS-13 reference by saying, we have people coming into the country, but we're taking people out of the country. You wouldn't believe how bad these people are. These aren't people, these are animals. So how did the media cover this? He's specifically talking about MS-13. It is obvious that he is talking about MS-13. It is clear that he is talking about MS-13. MS-13's actual tagline, I mean, this is their actual marketing line to their own members, is rape, steal, control. These are not good people. They are, in fact, as close to animals as you will find in human beings. So how do the media report this? Let me show you how the media reported this. Here's the New York Times. This is what they tweeted out. Trump lashed out at undocumented immigrants during a White House meeting, calling those trying to breach the country's borders animals. No, he didn't. He did not lash out at all illegal immigrants. He lashed out at MS-13, and they are animals. There have been several stories in the last couple of years about MS-13 members literally ripping hearts out of bodies while the people are still alive, beheading their political enemies, bringing drugs into the country. MS-13 are some of the worst people on planet Earth. If the descriptor animal does not apply to MS-13, it legitimately applies to no one. And yet the media are trying to play it as though Trump is not talking about MS-13. Instead, Trump was talking about illegal immigrants at large. Now, listen, Trump has said some bad stuff about illegal immigration generally. He's been overbroad in his language, but that's not what happened here. What happened right here was that he was ripping on MS-13, and the media decided to deliberately take him out of context. And it wasn't just the New York Times. It was C-SPAN, it was CNN, it was the New York Times, it was the Washington Post. They all decided to report this as though Trump was talking about illegal immigrants more broadly. They were lying. They were lying. Okay, and these lies have been very typical of the media this entire week. This entire week, we've heard from the media that innocents were killed on the border between Gaza and Israel. Except for the fact that Hamas admitted yesterday that 50 of the 62 people killed were Hamas members and another 3 were members of Islamic Jihad. So 53 out of the 62 people killed were active terrorists who worked for active terrorist groups, designated as such by the State Department. And the media covered it as though this is all Trump's fault. That evil Trump and Hamas, bunch of innocent folks. And now it's MS-13. Like, really? This is the train you want to jump on, media? You hate Trump so much that you're going to deliberately take him out of context? And then you wonder why we don't trust the media? And one of the great myths about President Trump is that people on the right don't like the media because Trump doesn't like the media. Nonsense. People on the right like Trump because Trump doesn't like the media. Okay, we didn't like the media a long time ago. As I said at CPAC, my entire career, we've spent thinking the media are totally full of it. I remember my parents canceling their subscriptions to the Los Angeles Times in the mid-90s over their coverage of Israel. The media has always been egregiously bad, but this last week has been just an incredible demonstration of how bad they are. And this is why. You wonder why people are resonating to President Trump? You wonder why? Because Trump will take a stand like MS-13 are a bunch of animals, or like Hamas is bad. And when they put people in front, when they put terrorists behind human shields in an attempt to get people killed for the cameras, that's bad. And he's right about both those things. And the media, because they hate Trump so much, decide to side with Hamas and side with MS-13. And then we're supposed to side with the media? We're supposed to believe the media's narrative about Trump? We're supposed to believe what the media have to say about truth and honor and how they're just firefighters running to the fire. They have no agenda. They're objective. They're truthful. Bull bleep. Okay, that is nonsense. And everybody knows that's nonsense. Now, members of the media, you want to regain your credibility? You wonder why the American people don't trust you? Because you don't deserve their trust. Because you are not acting in trustworthy fashion. Because you are acting, in many cases, as fake news, and in many other cases, as biased news. This is really egregious stuff. This is what's going to push people into Trump's camp. Because this week, I got to tell you, I was thinking about President Trump and what he did with regard to Jerusalem and what he's been saying about MS-13. And then I've been watching the media, and I got to tell you, if the media want me to make a decision between Trump and Hamas, that's not much of a choice. That's not much of a choice. I've been very critical of President Trump's character, but you can't lie about the guy to get him, members of the media, you idiots. You can't lie about him. You can't fib about him. You can't manipulate events on the ground. You can't ignore the truth about what's happening all over the world simply in order to slap at President Trump. If you do, it's just going to drive people into Trump's camp. I was talking to a top member of the Trump administration, this is a few months ago, and I was discussing, how is Trump going to win the votes necessary in order to win re-election? Like, do you have a plan for this? Because George W. Bush lost the popular vote in 2000 by 500,000 votes, and then he won by about 1.5 million votes against John Kerry, but he had to pick up about 10 to 11 million votes between 2000 and 2004 in order to win re-election because the electorate expands every year. Well, President Trump lost the popular vote this year or this election cycle by about 2.5 million votes. That means that he's going to have to make up probably 12 million votes in order for him to win re-election. So I said to this member of the Trump administration, how do you plan on winning 12 million additional votes? How do you plan on bringing a bunch of people over? And there wasn't a great answer. So part of it is going to be good policy, obviously, but part of it is going to be shifting definitions of Trump. Well, one of the ways that you can shift the definition of Trump is not by shifting who Trump is, but by the media making themselves so much worse than they already were that you feel like you're being forced to choose between the media and Democrats who are lying on a routine basis and defending the worst people on the planet and President Trump. Now, there's a case that was made during the last election cycle that it was a binary choice between Hillary Clinton and President Trump. This was not a logical case that I agreed with. I thought there was a third choice, and it was to stay home. But the worse the Democrats get, the worse the media get, the more it looks like a binary choice. And the better Trump governs, the more it looks like a binary choice. You want to push people into Trump's camp, guys. You are doing an excellent job of it. Speaking of doing an excellent job of pushing people into Trump's camp, there's a person named Juanita Scarlett. And Juanita Scarlett went to a party at Don Lemon's house. Okay, and Don Lemon had at his house Errol Lewis, who's a commentator at CNN, and Margaret Hoover, who's another commentator at CNN, and Don Lemon is a reporter at CNN. And guess who was over at Don Lemon's house? And they all took a selfie together. It was Michael Avenatti, okay, the lawyer for Stormy Daniels. There they are, just grinning right there. Look at that, the objective journalist grinning with Michael Avenatti. Now imagine for a second that, say, Michael Cohen had been invited to Sean Hannity's house. You think people might have gone nuts? They did, okay? There was that entire week where all we could talk about was the fact that Michael Cohen and Sean Hannity had been discussing issues. But somehow Michael Avenatti going to Don Lemon's house and hanging out there, right? That's not a problem at all. And then you wonder why we think the media are not objective. You wonder why so many people are turning to President Trump and saying, not interested in siding against Trump and with the media. It's insanity. It's total insanity. And if the media wish to keep alienating people, maybe they do. Maybe that's their goal. Maybe their goal is to make President Trump president for another term. They could do it. They could make it happen. All they have to do is continue being who they are. I wrote a column earlier this week about comedy in culture and how the right wing's response to comedy is not for us to generate our own comedians, it's to elect Trump. Because Trump's a giant middle finger to the entire comedic establishment. You make a bunch of jokes about Trump, you make a bunch of jokes about us, well, screw you, we'll elect that guy. Well, the same thing is true of the media. Remember, in 2012, Newt Gingrich nearly won the Republican nomination based simply on ripping on an anchor at one of his debates. That's how much we despise the media. And we don't despise the media for no reason. We despise the media because since 2001, when Bias came out by Bernard Goldberg, there has been a 20-year campaign by the right against bias in the media. And the media's response has not been to try and moderate, to try and hire some people who are conservative, to try and hire some people who might balance things out. Their goal has not been to strip out their own opinions. It's been to exacerbate the involvement of their own opinions. Now, maybe it helps their ratings. Maybe it's good for CNN. Maybe it's good for MSNBC. But that just demonstrates once and for all that they care more about.
We will make America great again.